and welcome to the Paal15 Podcast for another episode delving into the burning issues in the world of business technology. My name's Matt Gray, and today I'm joined by two of our partners here at Paal15, Paula Lopez and Werner Moysen. Good to have you back on the show, guys. How are you doing?
Very good. Thanks, Matt. Great to be here. First time with Paula, so looking forward.
Yeah, same. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's great to have you back, and for the first time together. So it should be exciting for everyone.
Probably not the last time.
Hopefully not the last time.
Hopefully.
Hopefully not. So today we're going to be discussing mergers and acquisitions, and that's something that's been rife in the tech market for the last 10 years or more, as players of all sizes look to shore up their positions and offerings. But as we're going to discuss throughout the episode, M&A certainly isn't a surefire route to success. So maybe let's start off with a little bit of context here, exploring how M&A has been shaping the sector and the big question, does it work? Maybe Paula, you could kind of take us away there.
Yeah, it's a topic that I really like. We often engage with investors, and then, sometimes earlier in the stage of perhaps investing or acquiring a business. Yeah, I mean, I think it's nothing new. It's something that has been, out there, for long. It is true that perhaps it's quite topical lately. I mean, we've seen quite a lot of movement on the back of the AI kind of like wave. So either bigger organizations acquiring, smaller businesses that perhaps have developed a tool specialized on, or has a product specialized on AI. But yeah, definitely in the B2B tech space is something that, is quite common. Now, it is true that then, I was recently talking to a client of ours, and he brought up some this research about the success of these deals, and I was quite surprised. So something between 70 and 90% of these deals fail, or more than fail, perhaps doesn't bring the results that then were expected.
That's a very kind of shockingly large number of, I suppose, failures, or as you say, just not getting the outcomes you'd expected. Werner, maybe could you take us through some of the challenges that are specifically being seen?
Yeah, I think like Paula mentioned, right? So we talk to both investors, companies that have an active M&A strategy, but also sometimes to the companies that have been acquired, right? So the challenges, I think we hear from multiple sources. Yeah, I think if I have to name a couple, right? Obviously, it first starts with, let's say, sort of strategic alignment, right? So making sure your company acquires a different company. Is the sort of strategy aligned? Is there a clear goal? Is there a clear vision actually for the two companies sort of moving forward? So that's where it all starts, right? And then you break it up into a couple of different challenges, right? So we have, very sort of instrumental, the sort of operational ones, right? So all the different systems and tools that they use, processes that they use to align those to make sure the new formed company moves forward. I think the interesting ones, particularly also in our area of the business, is sort of that cultural match, right? Or cultural integration. Quite often when, let's say, a large SI, for example, acquires a small boutique kind of firm, deeply specialized in one topic, you get like a totally different vibe, right? So the large companies, a lot of processes, and then the smaller companies with maybe a lack of processes, right? Bit more of a startup-y vibe, and then suddenly you have to color between the lines, right, and make sure you actually follow all the processes that the larger company already has in place. And I think that is nicely aligned to, for example, the retention challenge, right? So a lot of the sort of the leadership of the company that gets acquired gets an earnout also based on retention of talent. So if the key people actually leave, well, obviously it not only sort of devalues the company that is bought, but it also, basically makes sure that the leadership doesn't get the return that they expected, simply because half of the people are at a certain point are like, this is not really my cup of tea, I'm out of here. Yeah, and then literally in our sort of area, obviously also the whole brand's positioning, right? The whole proposition part, so the commercial alignments between company that acquires or investor that actually jumps in and brings a couple of companies together. Yeah, what does that mean, right? Are you going to make sure different companies or different entities are going to live next to each other, or Are you going to right away make sure there's going to be some alignment sessions and alignment between what is company A, company B actually selling, and do we need to do some work on aligning that and making sure there's one story and one positioning piece in place. Also to change the perception or to avoid that the perception actually changes in the market.
Yeah, and that's quite a lot of challenges that you've outlined there to overcome. So in our experience, when Paal15 has worked on M&A activity with our customers in the past, what is the kind of activity that has resulted in the most successful outcomes that gets them into that kind of rarefied 10 to 30% of success, I suppose? And what are the things that companies going through the process should really be focusing on?
I feel like, again, it's a lot to bring together. Is the people, the processes, the systems, the propositions, the story. I think that for us, again, I mean, we do part of the pie, right? Like, it will help to the successful outcome, but then not only this is a complex situation, but I think that's something that we do, and then doesn't need to be underestimated. Is exactly that: is the story, is the proposition. The way we approach it is always, from kind of like an audience-led point of view. So now, you're these two together. Like, what does it mean for the different audiences? What does it mean internally for your employees? What is changing? Like, what is the way forward? What does it mean for your customers? Like, now you're perhaps bringing, two services together, two products together. What is the problem that you're solving? Is the same than before? Is different? You do it faster. You do it like, what is what you bring? Like, why should they care? But then equally, analysts or investors, I think you need to align, and then that's what we help our customers with. We help them to come together from the get-go, and then draft or shape that story, and then adapt it to the different audiences. So then it is clear, what the new proposition look like, and why the different audiences should care. So I would say, like within this framework, like do it as soon as you can, and be very transparent in communication. And then also, I mean, again, it's kind of like this test and error kind of like approach. Sometimes, you come up with a solution, and then you need to test it to the different stakeholders and perhaps tweak it just to get to, to the right outcome. So that's a bit of, what we do is kind of like shape or bring that clarity within the process that sometimes, what we see is like, there is a lot going on, and then communication perhaps is lacking because there is that kind of like solid or consistent story doesn't exist.
And then how important is, say, brand management in this process? Because I suppose that would come from a similar point to you just made there, Paula, in terms of getting your value proposition sorted from a joint approach. Do companies need to make more of an effort to kind of work out their brand identity?
Yeah, I think it depends a bit on the type of company and also the heritage, right? I think if you look at, for example, Japanese companies, they often sort of acquire a business and then leave the brand as is for a certain period of time. Whilst there might be other situations where there's an obvious reason to ditch the old brand straight away, right? So I think there's not a sort of a yes or a no or a good answer or a bad answer. It's more, depending on the situation. I do think, obviously, what Paula just mentioned, it is very much about the proposition alignment, right? With whether it's a red logo or a yellow logo on top of it, that doesn't really matter. But it's more like, what is actually your promise to your audience? What is it that you actually sell? And how are you going to enrich an existing proposition by acquiring another company next to it, right? And how are you going to make sure these two things can live together or live next to each other? So I think that is more the part we see as sort of essential. And that is, like Paula mentioned, also where investors are asking us to help, or where sort of companies and customers that acquire the company asking us for help. So the brand management part, I think, is a tricky one. I'm not sure, Paula, if you have a different view on that one.
Yeah, I agree. I think, again, it's about the story. I mean, obviously, if it looks, if it's red or yellow, that's something that will come later. But 100% agree.
And then, of course, once you have this proposition for your two companies who've merged in place, what's the process in terms of measuring success, making sure that kind of the new merged companies delivering in the way that you've set out your goals?
I think you've got the hard metrics. I mean, obviously, the customer is gonna talk or is gonna buy or not. So that's the hard one. But then things like brand perception, I think that shouldn't be forgotten. So obviously, before the deal, different customers from both brands, they've got a perception of the company. As we merge, I think that's something that also needs to be measured and see the way we have been perceived. That perhaps is different to what we're aiming for, both internally and then particularly with customers. So I think you've got kind of like the hard metrics and then the soft metrics in a way. And then again, it's all about testing and evaluating and then adding feedback and tweaking. And then is a process. It's an ongoing process. It's not something that then you do once and then off you go. Probably we will need to adapt. And then again, because also particularly when it comes to tech, everything changes very quickly. So, it's not only about these two companies, but then it is also about the space where they play and then everything that is happening around it. So it will have to evolve naturally as we go.
Okay, that's really interesting. So the importance of the value proposition, having that set out is absolutely key. But I think that's it for this episode of the Paal15 podcast. So thank you, Werner and Paula, for joining me. And I'm sure we'll have you both together on the podcast soon.
Yeah, very cool. Pilo, I'm up for the next one.
Thank you. Same.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please make sure to like and subscribe on your platform of choice. And if you'd like to find out more about Paal15, check us out on the web at paal15.com or head over to our LinkedIn page. All that remains to do is say thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.